Let's go over the parts of the brain involved with attention. Of course, we first think about the frontal cortex, particularly three places: the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, and the frontal eye fields. Remember from my other video about the four lobes of the brain where we talked about the parts of the frontal lobe using the mnemonic RIO? The R stands for reward, ventromedial, the I stands for initiation, dorsomedial, and the O stands for order, which is this dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. The DLPFC plays a role in the top-down control of attention, including the selection of relevant stimuli and the maintenance of task goals. The ACC is involved with monitoring and detecting conflicts between competing attentional demands. It's like when you see the letters ACC and you think of AC like air conditioner, and then you think about the band AC/DC, and then you think about how Nantucket locals call their town AC, and then before you know it, your anterior cingulate cortex helps you monitor your attention, and you're back to focusing on what is important. And the frontal eye fields are what they sound like. They're involved in the control of visual attention, as well as generation of saccadic eye movements. In addition to the frontal lobe, the parietal cortex is also involved in attention, particularly regions like the intraparietal sulcus, or IPS, and the superior parietal lobule, or SPL. These play a role in spatial attention and the allocation of attentional resources across the visual field. These regions are involved in detecting and processing spatial information, orienting attention toward relevant stimuli, and coordinating visual attention and motor processes. So how are we going to remember the intraparietal sulcus, or IPS? IPS reminds me of UPS, and UPS workers need to have good visual spatial attention so they can deliver my package to the correct location, whether that's the back door, the porch, the garage, or the mailbox. The IPS is also involved in motor planning and coordination, which is required to throw the package accurately onto my doorstep, tool use and object manipulation, which helps the UPS driver use his GPS to find my house, and use his box cutter to illegally open my package, and numerical and mathematical processing, which is important for counting all their money, because did you know UPS drivers can earn as much as $172,000 without a degree? I remember the superior parietal lobule because superior athletes need to have a superior parietal lobule in order to have good spatial perception and awareness, visual spatial attention, sensory motor integration, body schema, motor imagery, and spatial working memory. The thalamus is also involved in attention. The thalamus serves as a relay station for sensory information and plays a role in directing attention to relevant sensory stimuli. Specific nuclei within the thalamus, such as the pulvinar nucleus, are involved in the control and modulation of attentional processes, particularly in the visual and auditory modalities. I remember the pulvinar nucleus because I think of some bully threatening to pulverize me, and I'm like, oh, I better pay attention to that because it's important. I see this enormous bully, and I hear him threatening me, and I better pay attention to that, and I better pay attention to where he's located so I can avoid him on my way to my locker. The reticular activating system, or RAS, is also involved in attention. It's a network of nuclei located in the brainstem that regulates wakefulness, arousal, and attention. It receives inputs from various sensory systems and projects to the cortex and other brain regions to modulate attentional states and promote alertness. The basal ganglia, including structures such as the striatum and the substantia nigra, play a role in the control and modulation of attentional processes, particularly in the selection of motor responses and the suppression of irrelevant stimuli. You can remember the basal ganglia as your personal gang, that helps you get away from the big bully. When you decide to run from him, you can thank your basal ganglia for helping you choose that motor response. And when you ignore the pretty flowers around you and keep running, you can thank your basal ganglia for helping you suppress irrelevant stimuli. The limbic system, including structures like the amygdala and the hippocampus, is involved in the regulation of attention, particularly in relation to emotional and motivational aspects of attention. The amygdala helps prioritize attention to emotionally salient stimuli, while the hippocampus plays a role in memory-related aspects of attention. To recap, attention involves the frontal lobe, particularly the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, and the frontal eye fields, the parietal lobe, particularly regions like the intraparietal sulcus, or IPS, and the superior parietal lobule, the thalamus, including specific nuclei within the thalamus like the pulvinar nucleus, the basal ganglia, including the striatum and the substantia nigra, also the reticular activating system of the brainstem, and the limbic system, including the amygdala and the hippocampus. Please like this video and subscribe if you want more free study videos for neuropsychology board certification.